finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, the Mid-Atlantic Thoroughbred Championships. They'll pick up Labor Day weekend at Parks. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're glad to have you with us. Coming up, we're going to talk about interference rules in horse racing, but let's start with Industry Week at Saratoga, where interference rules are one of the topics. But Industry Week is kind of a time of reflection, discussing issues in the thoroughbred business, navel gazing, whatever you want to call it. And the Jockey Club Roundtable is one of those events coming up this weekend. Ray, this week you wrote an editorial suggesting an idea for the industry to have something like a Mitchell report. Remember from a few years ago, baseball had this. It was kind of an investigation into performance-enhancing drug use in the sport. You had all these players not cooperating, denying, and then the investigation, it turns out they were lying. But you're suggesting something on a broader scale. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, the Mitchell report was independent. George Mitchell was a former U.S. Senator. He was affiliated with the Boston Red Sox, but he said, "Look, this is going to be no holds barred. I'm taking no prisoners." And when the report came out, it was a very tough and thorough report on performance-enhancing drugs in baseball. Racing is very good at creating committees and doing studies within its own group, but it has never really, other than the Jockey Club, which has hired McKinsey to do things, it has never really gone to an independent agency, independent person that it says, we need you to look at our business. Society is changing. We need to make sure that everything we're doing is acceptable to the general public, because right now I'm afraid that there's a vacuum of, inside the bubble people, inside racing, they do not understand how the rest of the world views horse racing. And I think it's important to get an independent look at that and examine things from the time a horse is conceived and foaled until the time it leaves the racetrack for aftercare programs.
Yeah, the entire span of a horse's racing career, and then afterwards, the life cycle, if you will, and the ethical issues that are in this sport. An outside perspective would work wonders, in my opinion, to maybe just give us a little bit more perspective, because you have people in the game who don't think that there are problems. Just this week at one of these events at Saratoga, Dr. George Malin, who runs the lab in New York, he suggested that he really doesn't think there's much cheating going on, or cheating going on at all, but the media keeps suggesting that it's out there. And then I looked at a quote from him 2 years ago where he said EPO, blood doping, has about 80 different formulations, and there's no lab in the world that could detect them all. And he also said the next wave of drugs will be designed to avoid detection. So which is it? There isn't cheating going on. You're trying to tell me there's not cheating going on, but then I found quotes from you saying how hard it is to catch EPO and how easy it is for people to come up with undetectable drugs. You got a problem there.
There is a problem in horse racing, and it's not just drugs. We're at a crisis time right now, and for people like that to get up and blame the media is ridiculous. There's hardly any media left, to be honest with you, that covers horse racing, and unfortunately, the only media that's there is to cover the news side, not the sports side. This is a serious issue we're facing, and as I said, the public is changing how it views the use of animals. We don't need to go down the road about what happened in greyhound racing and the circus and all that again. But horse racing, we know how the horses are treated. We know that the number of cheating that does go is the amount of cheating that goes on may be very limited. But the state by state rules aren't working. The most interesting thing to me in the Mitchell report was that he said the players fought him tooth and nail. They didn't want to be interviewed. 10 years later, he said the Players Association fully embraced the report, the recommendations, and they're very happy now with the much tougher drug testing program they have, because they were getting cheated before. The trainers, the members of the horsemen's groups that are opposing the creation of a a national oversight board, USADA, an independent board, they should be embracing this, because the honest people in the game are getting cheated by those who are not following the rules.
Yeah, and the media in these other sports has been kind of the force that finally got things out in the open. The Balco scandal, for example, with Barry Bonds in baseball, that was the San Francisco Chronicle. Lance Armstrong was hounded by an Irish journalist for I don't know how long, until he finally admitted what he had been doing. So the media sheds light on these things, and to blame the media for perpetuating something going on in horse racing, I think, is misguided. And let's just look at the history of this sport. It is riddled with cheating. You go back decades and decades, people were giving cocaine to horses. Over the years, there's milkshaking scandals, frog juice, snake venom, buzzers. I mean, I could go on about the things that have gone on trying to get an edge. So when people come out and say, oh, the tests suggest 99.5% of the sport, it's clean, I just cannot buy that based on the history, and also based on the anecdotal things we hear all the time. For example, a trainer bursting through security to take something out of the fridge and then disposing of it. Don't tell me it's not going on.
Yeah, the Jockey Club Roundtable a few years ago had Jeff Nowitzki, who worked for the IRS as part of an investigative team. He was involved in cracking the Balco scandal. He was involved in the Lance Armstrong bust. It wasn't through drug testing. It was through boots on the ground and interviewing people who were involved, who were aware of the cheating. He said something very interesting. There was an 8-hour window when the Tour de France could not test cyclists. And he said their chemists were so precise that the EPO could be administered during that window, and it would clear the system by the time they were allowed to start testing again. They had an 8 hours hands-off policy, and they changed that, and that's when a lot of testing results started coming back the other way. So to sit back and say, oh, our testing is working just fine is just hogwash, really.
We have a poll about this. Would the racing industry benefit from an independent study of ethical issues, drugs in the sport, etc.? Let us know your thoughts at PaulickReport.com. Ray, of course, interference rules were a huge story this year with the disqualification of maximum security in the Kentucky Derby, and then a lot of discussion afterwards and now this week about the difference between the rules here and other places in the world. Most of the rest of the world uses a standard called Category 1, and the standard there is that would the horse that was offended, have finished in front of the winner. And that's different than what we have here, where would the horse that was offended, were they cost an opportunity for a better placing? We saw a perfect example of this on Sunday at Saratoga Race 4. Let's take a look at what happened, and you can see the winner was a clear winner, but this horse was taken down and placed behind the third place horse because that horse could have probably finished second. What do you think?
Yeah, they're clear it was interference there, and it did cost the horse second place. That was in the judgment of the stewards, and maybe there was a little acting going on by the jockeys involved, and that's part of the whole process. The jockeys have to sell it to the stewards when there is a horse that drifts in or out. And I don't really have a strong opinion on Category 1 versus Category 2. My opinion is, let's just get a rule and stick with it across the country. Let's have the same language for interference. Right now, the language for what constitutes interference and disqualifications is different from state to state. When you're watching on TVG or at a simulcast facility or on one of the ADW websites, you don't care. You don't care where the race is run. You just want the rules to be the same and to be interpreted the same. And right now they're not.
I guess Category 1 seems like a more logical way to do it because you're focused on the winner. I mean, if a horse was the best horse in the race and they committed a minor foul that affected the third place horse, that's different than having, deciding that third place horse could have finished first. I mean, that's different than what we have now. It seems more logical. In this case, the Saratoga race, that horse was clearly the best. There was I think it was a slight foul that might have cost a better placing. And of course, third place is important too in terms of betting because you got trifectas, you got win, place, show. So it's difficult. Whatever the standard is, it's going to be subjective. I understand why people are pushing for this Category 1 because it makes it a little harder to take horses down who are clear winners.
No matter which rule you decide on, you're not going to make everybody happy. But this is horse racing. Not everybody is never happy all the time. So, it's just, let's just decide on a rule and stick with it. Should we be with the rest of the world? Probably, but we're not with the rest of the world on something like LASIK. So yeah. I could see this, this thing continuing the way it is.
It's tough because it's different than other sports. Tennis is the perfect sport for technology because it's either in or it's out. And you can go to the replay and they have that graphical thing now where you can see where the ball landed. Yeah. That's it. Case closed, right? Baseball, same thing in a lot of cases. It's either safe or out, ball or strike, and that's it. But in horse racing, it's like the game is over, the race is over, and then you're going back and reviewing what happened and making changes to the outcome. So that's completely different than where in other sports, the outcome is right there, it's decided. It might affect the result of the game, but you're not ending the game and going back. So it's difficult. It's just a different type of rule.
If we go to Category 1, the stewards are still going to have to handicap whether or not the horse that was interfered might have won the race. There is no, like you said, clear-cut decision on that. But right now they're handicapping, could this horse that finished 5th have gotten 4th if he wasn't interfered? I mean, that sounds kind of silly, really. But that's what they're doing. They're projecting whether or not interferences in a race cost a horse a placing, whether it's 1st through 5th. And out here in Del Mar, I have never seen so many inquiries and actually so many disqualifications as there have been so far this year.
Really? Well, going back to the Kentucky Derby, even if the standard were different, you could probably make the case, and I know people already have, that Maximum Security's interference with War of Will cost War of Will the race. And that is a perspective on that. Other people believe it wasn't enough, for War of Will to overtake Maximum Security no matter what happened. So again, it will always be subjective. Well, it'll be interesting to see whether that change gets made or not. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, picking up again Parks Labor Day weekend. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.